Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Tuesday, December the 2nd, which makes this the news and events for Monday, December 1st, day 1377 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital currently under siege. Hey, Derek Sands. Hey, TK's daddy. Hey, Anthony Tommy Tom. Hey, Coffin. Hey, Seawolf, you have a nice birthday? Hey, Robert Stewart Key. Hey, Disco Sounds, thanks. Hey, Bernard. I'm okay. Hey, Flavius. Nice, man. I'm glad you did. Stephen Hulance, how do you do? Hey, Nicola Jones. Sorry, pal. Be careful out there in the snow. Try it, do it. I hear peace soon. That seems highly unlikely. Hey, Chrissy Locks. Hey, Nightshade. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Mike Kelly. Hey, Flying Sunbeams. Every day, Seawolf. Little older every day. Lukey, hello from Ukraine. Hey, Nana. I'll give you a minute. Evening, Alice. Hey, Mr. Local. Hey, T-Bone. Hey, Kid. I have not seen our boy Leo Ring come in. And Leo Ring is the sponsor of tonight's live. Hey, Stu. Hey, Steven. Leo Ring is the sponsor of tonight's live. If we see our buddy Leo around, please thank him. I don't have any other sponsors the rest of the week, guys. If anybody wants to sponsor live, PayPal's in the description. So DuchessCBD.nl. Ha! How you doing, Dutchies? Wants to know about the situation around Pokrovsk. And we can start with that. We can start with the front line, sure. Hey, Guard. Hey, King Smiley. Hey, Feisty. So, as I understand it, the situation around Pokrovsk is extremely violent and extremely fluid. Now, we have reports today. Hey, Bjorn. We have reports today that the Ukrainians have actually officially completed the Dobrapilla clearing. So the Dobrapilla advance was that quote-unquote breakthrough that the Russians made back in August, where they got 16 miles behind Ukrainian lines all the way up to the main fortress belt of the Donetsk. And all of that land has been reclaimed. The Russians are kicked out or in retreat there. Now, that means that the Russians have not been able to close the loop north of Mirnograd and Pokrovsk. And in fact, we have reports that Russian forces in Pokrovsk have been pushed back slightly. There was some advance beyond the railroad tracks. The Ukrainians had been trying to keep them south of the railroad tracks. But it looks like maybe the Ukrainians have pushed them back south of the railroad tracks again. Now, look, the Russians are pouring everything they have into Pokrovsk. This is not to say that the Russians are losing their foothold in Pokrovsk. I'm not suggesting that. However, they have failed to close the road to Mirnograd, which means that the Ukrainians can continue to pull men and equipment out of Mirnograd and escape being caught in the cauldron. And that appears to be the short-term goal. We've already seen 2 successful withdrawals under fire of Ukrainian troops from Mirnograd. Well, Dutchies, the battle for Pokrovsk goes on. I mean, that's just a fact on the ground. The battle for Mirnograd goes on. Neither of those cities have fallen to the Russians. However, it is worth pointing out that the Ukrainians do seem to be actively pulling out of Mirnograd to prevent an encirclement. Now, we also had a report that a bunch of Russians were encircled in Mirnograd by the Ukrainians. Whether or not Pokrovsk falls this year is anybody's guess. Right now, there is a pitched, violent, house-to-house, street-to-street, urban engagement of the two forces. For their part, the Russians, it's the Fifth Army, the Russian Combined Arms Fifth Army, that is responsible for closing that gap and encircling those Ukrainians. In the Mirnograd-Pokrovsk agglomeration, right? It's my understanding that to date, the 5th Combined Arms Army has failed to do that. And they are, in fact, calling in elements of the Russian naval infantry, the Marines, the Russian Marines, from the 155th and another bunch of Russian Marines, if I'm not mistaken. But it wasn't the 810th. I forget who it was. Additionally, we see the Russians in their desperation to make some forward movement in Donetsk. They are forcibly or have forcibly conscripted 40,000 Ukrainians from inside the temporarily occupied territories, which is a war crime, I would remind everybody, and are pumping them into the meat grinder at Pokrovsk, is what's happening there. Now, Dutchies, in Dutchy land, you might have also heard that Kupiansk has fallen to the Russians, right? Because that's been all the Russian propaganda for the last 2 weeks. We've taken Kupiansk, we've taken Pokrovsk, right? We're moving forward. Not so fast there, Ruskies. Because not only have they not taken Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, which they haven't, pitched battles continue for that space. They have, in fact, according to Zelensky today, been driven out of Kupiansk entirely. Entirely. Just last week, the Russians posted video of a bunch of Russians with a flag in Kupiansk and claimed to have taken the city. What that was really a picture of was a bunch of surrounded, starving Russians with a fucking flag. That's all it was. And now the Russians are completely out of Kupiansk. Overnight last night, we saw the Ukrainians strike railroad hub infrastructure in both Donetsk and Luhansk, hitting the Russian rear and their resupply lines, as well as the railroad hub in Lvov, which is up in Kursk Oblast, inside of Russia, trying to cut off the lifeblood, the supply lines, to the front line up in the north and in the east. Beyond that, we don't have much on frontline updates. The front is not really moving. In fact, today we received an analysis from the Institute for the Study of War, the military think tank in DC. That analysis says that the Russians don't have the manpower to exploit a breakthrough. Now, this is important to understand because the Russians are trying to break through the lines, right? The only thing is they don't have the manpower to exploit a breakthrough should it ever come. That is a critical understanding to have. If Russia can't exploit a breakthrough, then the breakthroughs don't mean anything. Advancing doesn't mean anything because you don't have the power behind you to go further. Now, it is important to recognize that in this Trump-approved peace scam, one of the things that the Ukrainians are being asked to do is just give up all of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions that they have not yet taken. And I got to tell you, it really, it was like a punch in the face today when I saw that the American peace plans, American peace proposals, indicate that America is going to recognize these territories as Russian. Even if the Europeans don't, even if Ukraine doesn't accept it, it looks as though my country is going to recognize these territories as Russian. Now, that is a crime and a sin that rewards the aggressor. And it is so disheartening to understand. There was a long read in the Wall Street Journal today. And for anybody that likes a long read in the Wall Street Journal and is interested in Ukraine, I urge you to read this article because it makes it very clear. The current administration in the United States, which you all know I think is a treasonous coup, and that the Russians, the Kremlin, is running America from the White House. This article in the Wall Street Journal today did everything in the world to confirm that for me. Did you see it, Maddie? It's very disheartening because it makes it clear that for this administration, this American administration, this war is not about right versus wrong. It is not about autocracy versus democracy. It is all about how they can line their pockets off the backs of the Russian people. That's what it is. This article in the Wall Street Journal, Arna saw it, right? You know, Arna, you think about what ExxonMobil just went through. They invested billions of dollars. I forget what the real figure was. I want to say it was between 5 and 7 billion that ExxonMobil had invested in Siberian oil fields and working with the Russians to get gas out of the ground, right? Or gas and oil out of the ground. And the CEO of ExxonMobil met with the CEO of Rosneft, the Russian oil business that has just been sanctioned by the Trump administration. Thanks, Richard. They are looking to make deals. A friend of Don Jr.'s, who he went to college with, and who is a large donor to the Trump campaign, is looking to do deals for the Arctic gas exploration with the Russians. Another donor to the Trump campaign, large donor to the Trump campaign, is trying to get a license from the U.S. Treasury Department to buy the Nord Stream pipelines and get them back up and running. For what? To sell Russian dirty energy to Europe? You think Europe's going to take it, even if the pipeline is owned by an American? It is heartbreaking for me sitting here in Kyiv, and I'm not looking for any sympathy here, okay? I'm trying to paint a picture of what life is like for the Ukrainians. Today, for example, I had no heat, no lights for 12 hours of the day. Now, look, nobody should worry about me, right? I'm used to be an outdoorsman, Aaron. I'm not so much anymore. But I like to camp. I spend a lot of time outside. I'm not at risk from these inconveniences of 21st century life. But I think about my neighbors. I think the woman next door to me here is 87 years old, right? This is not how she should be spending her retirement years, at risk of freezing to death in her sleep, while the Americans are making billion-dollar deals with our enemy. Exactly, Nightshade. I'm very well insulated. Nobody has to worry about me not having lights and power. Although today I also did not have any internet, which makes it very hard to be productive. I mean, I have, the battery pack so that the internet works, but if the internet itself isn't working, I think we had more strikes against communications infrastructure last Saturday. And that is the problem. If you have to ask who the enemy is in the Russia-Ukraine war, you are not paying attention. Because the federal system of government in the United States has been completely compromised by the Kremlin. Donald Trump is a creature of the Kremlin. Make no mistake. And he is working for the Kremlin. Why am I illusioned that Russia is my enemy? Feisty, you're here, aren't you? Would you please show Dr. Felix to the door permanently? Thank you. No, it is so disheartening to see America in the hands of traitors who would sell out our core principles for Russian money. Jared Kushner and Witkoff are in the Kremlin now, or they're in Russia anyway. They're in Moscow today. They flew in today. They meet with Kremlin officials tomorrow. Now, there is a sliver of good news here. It's not real good news, but it's some good news. The Trump, as I understand it, the Trump White House is very split on the Ukraine issue. You got Witkoff and Kushner, who are pushing the Russian maximalist demands plan, and also the theft of Russian frozen assets for themselves. That's an important part of the plan that I think we should mention every time. The fucking grifters, exactly. So you got Kushner and Witkoff pushing the Russian plan, the one written by Kirill Dmitriev last April, the so-called 28-point plan. But remember what happened when that plan was leaked. In Geneva, the Europeans met, and they came up with another plan. That plan is being backed by Rubio. Trump seems to have favored the Rubio European plan and sent that back with Witkoff and Kushner to the Kremlin. Now, it's not very good news, right? And I think the only reason that Trump really did it was because he's had so much pushback from the Europeans about sidelining them and leaving them out of the negotiations when it's their security that's at stake. And I think he was able to do that political move, because he knows that Putin is never going to accept either of these edited plans. Never, ever in a million years is Putin going to... The problem that we have is that the Ukrainian constitution doesn't allow the borders to be changed by force. They can't give up any land under the terms of their own constitution. The Russians have illegally annexed these territories and written them into their constitution. So the Russians are pushing for the Ukrainians to give up land that the Russians have failed to conquer. 10% of Luhansk, 22% of Donetsk, 24% of Zaporizhia, and I forget, I think it's like 14% of Kherson. The Russians haven't conquered it. But we demand Ukrainians stop occupying our land and give it to us. Ukrainians are occupying their land. That's what Putin just said over the weekend. That the Ukrainians who live in Donetsk, where no Russian soldier has stepped foot in this conflict, should just be handed over to them. Now, Alexander Stubb, the prime minister, right? Not president, prime minister of Finland, told Trump last year that that land is the highway to Kyiv. It's the highway to Kyiv. It is certainly the best defended parts of the Donbass. It's the fortress belt, because the Donbass war has been going on since 2014. And so the fortified emplacements, and then of course there's been a lot of new construction since the start of this war. You got tank traps, trenches, fortified emplacements, machine gun nests, right? The whole 9 yards. Concertina wire, protecting the rest of Ukraine from the Russian horde threatening its sovereignty and future. So it was very disheartening for me today to read this piece in the Wall Street Journal that makes it clear that this administration is in Putin's pocket and have only one interest: to line their own pockets in cash deals with Russia, with zero interest in a just or lasting peace. Very disheartening. It's sickening, twisted genius. It's absolutely sickening. Hey, Kurian. And that is what Trump is all about, Valley Guy. You are not wrong. But it is infuriating. It's infuriating that we can't seem to be able to do anything about it. Trump pilfers the Treasury, wipes his ass with the Constitution, breaks laws, gives illegal orders, and murders innocent Colombians in the Caribbean. And we seem to be unable to stop him. Congress is just in his pocket. Mike Johnson is just the most evil little troll I've ever seen in my life. The shit coming out of his mouth to justify the illegal war against Venezuela that we are waging is insane. Stephen Miller is the most obscene piece of trash. You and me both, Little Red. You and me both. Oh, my live has been restricted for harassment and bullying. I would love to know what I've said that is harassment and bullying. Harassment and bullying. I know. I don't really know. It says it restricts some audiences. So I guess probably under 18s, maybe. Maybe it also restricts maggots so that their thin skin doesn't get hurt. Paul, I'll give you what for? Do they have aid available for winter food and blankets? I mean, here in the capital, Mark, definitely. There's all kinds of things. And a lot of places have, hey, Ace is high. And a lot of places have generators. So even though it's expensive, right, you have to burn the gas, the conveniences of modern life continue. You know, your elevator works, your electric stove works, etc. I made a vegetable stock today. It came out quite good. But, you know, that was what my grandmother used to do when the coal furnace would go out. We grew up in a house with a coal furnace. And when sometimes the coal fire would die out, and the house would be cold, Grandma would make a pot of soup, right? A big pot of boiling water will keep the house warm. What's known about Ukrainian offensives in the Sumy direction? As I understand it, Shark, the situation there is basically unchanged. The Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back to just about the Russian border, and in one place, to the border. The Russians keep sending small infiltration groups forward. The Ukrainians keep hitting the logistics lines, the ground lines of communication, so that food and aid can't flow in. Many of the Russians are basically cut off from the main body of Russian troops, and they're trying to starve them out. They keep doing these surround maneuvers with small villages, where they surround the village on three sides, cut the ground line of communication, and then starve the guys out until they take the town. Never listen to George Galloway. George Galloway is an unbearable piece of shit. I can't believe that bastard is still around. He is just a parasite on British politics. Oh, I got another one. They're really going after me today. I do want to mention, everybody probably saw that for the first time, well, probably not the first time, actually for like the dozenth time. It's just that all the other ones were in ports. The Ukrainians hit 2 Shadow Fleet tankers in the Black Sea. Mike, this administration is not going to let there be midterms. That's what I'm worried about. A Republican operative just bought Dominion voting systems. The Republicans are now in charge. A Republican operative is now in charge of the voting machines in 27 states. So I don't see how the midterms are going to go on in any kind of normal way. Now, regarding the Shadow Fleet tankers, this is the first time that the Ukrainians have hit oil tankers in the Black Sea with sea babies that we're aware of. There were 3 tankers that broke up in heavy seas last winter, which maybe it was just the weather, maybe they got hit. We don't really know. This is the first time that we've seen sea babies hit tankers. and the tankers were badly damaged. It is important to note that these tankers were empty, that they were returning from the Mediterranean to fill up with oil at Novorossiysk. Now, it is worth mentioning, we don't yet know what happened, but a third oil tanker off the coast of Senegal was hit today, or at least is burning. Right, Nightshade? That tanker, the Marin, made several stops at ports in West Africa. And so it's unclear how much fuel is on it. It's faring gas oil, which is kind of a heavy fuel oil product for farm machinery, off-road equipment, industrial applications, that kind of thing. It's unclear. Some sources are saying that it was hit by Ukrainian drones. But how could that be? They're so far away. There's no way that a Ukrainian drone went through the Straits of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, across the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, all unnoticed at every point of the trip, out into the Atlantic Ocean, down around the western Cape of Africa to hit this. That's not a thing. So it would have had to have been launched somewhere nearby, relatively nearby. So it's unclear what's happening there, but a third Shadow Fleet tanker is burning. That is a change. The Turks, of course, have registered a complaint with the Ukrainians. You know, look, we know you're at war, but in our exclusive economic zone and in our territorial waters, we do not want to see this thing happening. Both of, if I'm not mistaken, both the Kairos and the Virat, the two tankers that were hit in the Black Sea, were both flagged under the port of Ghana, or the country of Ghana. They were flying a Guyanese flag, or a Ghanan flag. Or Gabon, an African nation anyway. It's been my opinion for a long time that the Ukrainians should be interdicting these Shadow Fleet vessels. I mean, I think other countries should be as well. They are uninsured, they are uninspected, they are death traps, an oil spill, ecological disasters waiting to happen. And they're commonly uninsured. So when the disaster happens, there won't be that padding to protect whatever coastline it happens to happen on. So it's going to happen with these things. Now, one thing that nobody talks about is that before the war started, the Ukrainians commissioned two Corvette-class warships from the Turks. And those warships have been basically completed. The keels are set for both of them. And they are sitting in dry dock in Turkey. All they need are the proprietary communications arrays and some additional equipment from the Ukrainians, and they're ready to go. Ukraine has a navy, right? They have a bunch of people in the navy, but their warships are sitting in Turkey, and they can't get them into the Black Sea. Turks are never going to allow it, right, under the Montreux Convention. So what could they do with them? They could be out there interdicting Shadow Fleet vessels all around the world. Or at the very least, at the Straits of Gibraltar, at the Straits of, what's that little strait where Denmark and Norway meet? There's like a little hook place there. And it's it's the thinnest part of the Baltic out to the Atlantic, to the North Sea, wherever that is. That's a great place to interdict. No wonder I don't know what it is. But there is agreement here from the Norwegians. Skagerrak. Skagerrak? Oresund sounds more familiar. So I don't know. But anyway. You get the point, right? There are places, hey, Reefer Man, there are places where this could be done. I would love to see the Ukrainian Navy finish those 2 ships and get them out in the Mediterranean, out in the Atlantic, interdicting these shadow fleet tankers, seizing the oil and selling it. Fuck it. Fuck it. One man's piracy is another man's privateer. The other thing that does, and I think that these hits on the Kairos, the Virat, and the Mern will affect Russia's ability to crew these ships. So far, there hasn't been a problem finding crew for them, right? Now there's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Who's going to want to captain such a boat that could be blown out of the water at any time? See your crew burn. That's going to be a problem. I agree, Maria. Is it Sweden and Denmark? My apologies. My apologies. Have I seen the report on the Russian budget for next year? The only thing I've seen about the Russian budget for next year is that it's based on $56 a barrel oil. Now, the last quote that I saw for Russian oil was $60 a barrel. So that's bad news, right? If we can't get that price back down, they've written a budget that they'll be able to spend the money for. That's a problem. 40%, not 40. So you got to be careful with this number. So it's almost 40%, right? 38%. But that's not the point. The point is that 38% is not just for the military. It's also for all the internal security apparatus. For all the apparatchiks in the GRU, the FSB, the National Guard, the Rosguardia, as well as the police forces, the federal police forces. There have been cuts to the social welfare budget, particularly health care and education. The real key is in the price of oil. After Tuapse got hit, after Novorossiysk got hit, after the sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil went on, we saw the price of Russian crude sink to $36 a barrel. That's where it needs to be to bankrupt Russia. And unfortunately, it does not appear that price reduction has held. Russia's a former communist country. They have huge social welfare expenditures. It's one of the reasons why the Russians can be so poor and not feel it like we would feel it in the US, because everybody over there owns their home. They were given to them in exchange for low wages working for Russian state-owned enterprises during the Soviet era. It's a very similar thing here. I did not mean to send that invitation, whoever got that. I was just trying to scroll. Hey, Seawolf. So far, that's true, Guard, right? The Ukrainians are hitting the tankers when they're empty of oil, to the best of our knowledge. I'm not so sure about that boat out on the Atlantic, but that was definitely the case with the 2 tankers in the Black Sea. Oh yeah, you can tell whether or not one of these tankers is loaded just by how high it sits in the water, right? If you got 1,000,000 barrels of oil on one of these super tankers, it's down low in the water. If it's dropped it all off, it's light in the water. It's up above the waterline. There were so many things I wanted to talk. I'm sorry, I had no power, no heat, and no internet for most of the day. So I didn't even write anything down because I thought I won't be able to read it in the dark. But there were so many things that I did want to talk about. The split in the White House between the Kushner-Witkoff group and the Marco Rubio group is an important political divide that we as Americans, anybody who's got a senator and a congressman, or a couple senators and a congressman, should be on the phone to them, yelling at the answering machine about us selling the Ukrainians out for Russian money to Russian agents, because that's what's happening. That's absolutely what's happening. There have been a couple bad attacks here. We were not spared overnight Friday night nor Saturday night, though Saturday night was much more quiet than Friday had been. Friday night, overnight, we saw, if I remember right, it was 558 drones with about a 94% interception rate. Great shooting by the boys. And then there were 35 missiles, 22 of them shot down, about a 60% interception rate. Pretty good for a bunch of ballistic missiles. It is worth mentioning, though, on Friday night, overnight into Saturday morning, right? The Russians have a Buyan-class corvette in Novorossiysk. The Buyan-class corvettes have 8 launch tubes. They can fire 8 caliber cruise missiles at a time. That's the full up load. So there's video, get this, there's video of this corvette launching its missiles as part of the big attack on Friday night. 8 missiles go up. The 8th missile is intercepted by a Russian Pantsir system that must have thought it was an incoming Ukrainian bogey. And so the Russian, that's what's so disappointing, so frustrating, it makes me crazy that the United States might sell out this country to these idiots, to these Russian morons who shoot down their own planes with regularity, who shoot down their own missiles, whose air defense regularly intercepts their own apartment buildings. The Pantsir is responsible for taking out more Russian apartments than it is Ukrainian missiles. It is so disheartening to see these idiots maybe gonna win because of the orange turd. It's unreal. Hey, there's Leo Ring. Everybody thank Leo Ring. He is the sponsor of tonight's live. Guys, it's getting awful hard to find live sponsors, I've noticed. I don't have any sponsors the rest of this week. And that does make life hard. Thanks, Leo. So yeah, I don't have any other sponsors this week. If anybody wants to sponsor live, the PayPal's in the description. No, Arn, not you. Anybody but Arn. Don't apologize if you can't. Just do it if you can. Nobody should ever apologize to me for anything. Thank you, Jan. Thank you very much. I sure appreciate it. Thank you, Jan. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Don't worry, Titch Talk. Each according to his own. Each according to his own. I was also, I'll tell you what else. Can I just tell you this? This really depressed the shit out of me. I know this guy, he's got a Ukrainian wife. They live here in Kyiv, but he's American. He's from Iowa. So right off the bat, you know he's not the sharpest tool in the drawer, right? And he wrote this piece for his hometown newspaper that could have been written by the fucking Kremlin. Like, it is just such a bullshit piece of anti-Ukrainian, pro-Russian propaganda written by an American for an American audience that it broke my heart. He sent me the article. He's like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, I think you should be ashamed of yourself. I mean, do you even like this country? You couldn't have done a better job if the Kremlin paid you to publish this. It's insane. And you fucking live here. I don't get it. I do not get it. But this guy is so fucking stupid, right? Like so unaware of the world and of his own place in it. That he took a flight. He flew to Turkey. Get this. He flew to Turkey for vacation, leaving his wife behind in Kyiv. On February 23rd, 2022. He didn't believe an invasion was coming. February 23rd, 2022, I'll tell you where I was. I was prepared to stay up all night watching the news, waiting for the news that the invasion had begun on my farm in Pennsylvania. Like, I didn't live here. I had no connection here, but I knew it was coming. I didn't have to wait long either, because 10:30 at night is 5:30 in the morning here, and the report started early. So this guy is unbelievably unaware, just ignorant beyond words. And it is so common, and I don't know what we're going to do about it, because the fate of the 21st century hangs in the balance here. I don't know the answer to that, Flying Sunbeams. I'd have to look that up. I really don't know. You know, Leo, well, you know, Leo, he doesn't speak any Ukrainian. He only speaks Russian. Now, everybody here speaks Russian, but only being able to speak Russian means you're going to tend to be with a certain group of people. Hey, no. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left, guys. I want to again thank Leo Ring, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Jan is going to sponsor tomorrow night, so we're looking for other sponsors for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If anybody can sponsor live, please do. Or join the Patreon. If you can kick me $5 a month, join the Patreon, please. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps groups on the Book of Faces, and the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Travis, Roy, Feisty, and Maddie. Thank you all. So questions, comments, points of observation, anything from anybody about anything? I have not seen 2,000 meters to Andriivka. Is it on the Tuba U's? In the United States, Ben, right? Thank you, Arn. You're in the UK. I have not seen it yet, but I hear great things about it. It's on the YouTube. You need to use a US VPN, says Pingu. A Rusky ICBM test did blow up. You guys might have heard of the so-called Sarmat missile. I think the NATO designation is the Satan missile. No, Valley Guy, I missed your question. Give me a second. The Sarmat missile has only had one successful test flight. I want to say it was April of 2001. It has never had another successful test flight. And this one was also a bust. It blew up like on the launch pad again. Look, the Russians, you don't get innovation in an autocracy. Because when people fail, you don't say, oh, well, what happened? Let's look at the data. No, you say, shoot them, get two new guys in here who will make it work. That's not how you get innovation. It's why everything in Russia is falling apart. And they're shooting down their own missiles. Valley Guy says, is NATO planning a cyber, maybe drone attack? No. However, who was it? Oh, I forget his name. He's basically, if I'm not mistaken, he's the highest ranking civilian at NATO. He's got an office with a staff of 2. And I forget his exact title, but it's like NATO planner, NATO mission systems planner, something. He is suggesting, and I apologize, I can't think of his name, but he is suggesting that we need to reevaluate what warfare means. And with things like cyber warfare and drone incursions into NATO space, NATO has been highly reactive. So, okay, our servers are under a denial of service attack. We need to respond to that attack. Let's respond to that attack. What he is suggesting is that NATO should stop being reactive and consider being proactive. So we know where these ransomware gangsters are located in Russia. Let's attack them. Not with missiles and drones, but cyber. They said they have 800,000 troops in Poland ready to go. Well, I wish they would. I mean, I really wish they would. The Ukrainians have been the only ones fighting and dying and bleeding in this cause. Cause of righteousness' sake, I would say. And as resilient and dedicated and everything as the Ukrainians are, they are not immortal. They are not immortal. They are not omnipotent. They cannot last forever. And they have done so much heavy lifting in this thing for so long. It's really about time that the rest of us stood up and did something. And in the United States, that way is blocked, right? Somebody get a plunger and flush that orange turd. Did you read the article on what it would cost Europe in money if Ukraine lost compared to supporting? Ha! No, but I can bet that it's 10 times more even. I don't think the EU is showing that they can be easily taken. It's just that, when you're at peace for a long time, it's awfully hard to go to war. Awfully hard. The Ukrainians have done a stellar job. Stellar job. Right, over 10 times because of refugees, because of lost economic growth, because of, all the deals that the Donald wants to do with Russia is money you could be making. Except you'd be making it with Russia. What the hell is wrong with the president and CEO of ExxonMobil meeting with the head of Rosneft? What is wrong with him? They just got burned for $5-6 billion when they had to pull out of Russia. The Russians have nationalized $30 billion worth of foreign business since the start of this war. Jarlsberg beer, Danone, Dannon yogurt in America, Juniper Networks, half a dozen electrical power generation plants. We will pay, as Flying Sunbeam says, exponentially more if Ukraine fails. And Donald Trump is an impediment to the success here. He really is. He is so clearly on the side of Russian money. And his whole gang is. They just want to make money off the blood of Ukrainians and the backs of the Russian people. And it is a crime and a sin. He certainly does, twisted genius. He certainly does. Trump approval at 36%. We need to tie Ukraine to that. That's part of it. That's definitely part of it. That is all that Trump cares about is money. Money and power, his own ego. He cares about that too. Hold on. I got to complete this puzzle to continue my live. Okay. It is just about the top of the hour, so before we're done, I want to again thank Leo Ring, who came through and sponsored tonight's live. I want to thank everybody who has stepped up to sponsor lives the rest of the week. Thank you. I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. The billionaire cabal has taken over. They have. And we got to do something to take our country back because it's a real problem. It's a real problem. All right, everybody. That's it for me on this chilly December 1st, Monday night, rather. Right? All those years of efforts by the American people to stem the tide of Russian aggression, the collapse of the USSR, and now this. After we fed them in the 90s when they were starving, they turn around and stab us in the back. Obscene. And we cannot let it happen again. This time when the collapse comes, no food unless you give us your nukes. Give us your nukes and we will feed you. No nukes, no food. Yeah, that's what worries me, Arn. If we don't stem this tide, that's what it's going to become for the 21st century. Instead of getting out into the asteroid belt and mining rare earths out there where it doesn't poison the water for everybody here is the way forward, not this ridiculous competition for the limited supply that's here on Earth. There is an unlimited supply in the asteroid belt if we just move off this rock. And we'll never do it if we're stuck to dirty fossil fuels and an oligarch class that deny education and equity to the rest of us. It'll be the Hunger Games. And that's what we can't allow, Matthew. We cannot allow rulers who don't care if their people starve. And I did have a weird kind of conspiracy theory idea today. It's not really a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. The oligarchs don't care about Russia. They only care about their own pockets, right? Maybe they're willing to sacrifice Russia as it exists if it means they leave the country with $100 billion. Maybe they're doing this intentionally to line their own pockets and then get the fuck out when the collapse comes. Live life on their yachts at sea. No, I wouldn't. We're up to 800 billionaires, are we? Tax them out of existence, that's what I say. Tax them out of existence. All right, everybody. Make it a great day and have a pleasant tomorrow.